So I was driving around and I was thinking, how can people start creating podcasts? Because I made this post on LinkedIn earlier about why start a podcast now, and it's just different reasons as to why one might start a podcast. For example, if you want to retain employees, you can trade them through your podcast. If you want to get new clients, you can, create content around your ideas for them, and meet new people. If you want to get new leverage, meaning you want to introduce yourself to new people that you otherwise wouldn't be able to meet. Well, having a podcast is a great way to do it if you just want to think through things, because as you talk, you inevitably are thinking through things. Those are great ways to have a podcast. And it's like, well, it comes down to, well, how are you going to create a podcast? Well, there's a lot that goes into that, getting it on different platforms, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, all those different places. And that's important, no doubt about it. And as a creator, sometimes I see it as, well, we have this process. We have different ways that we create our podcast, and we have great equipment. We spent a lot of money on that equipment, and we utilize it, and we want to give the best possible audio sound that we can possibly give, and the best podcast that we can possibly give. And then we take those podcasts and we take them down into smaller chunks of content, and post them on social media, and create videos and post them on YouTube, or stick that YouTube embedded video on the website, and all those different things. If you want to email it to someone, you can do that. So but as you think through it, it's like, well, that's a lot. It's a lot of work, and no doubt about it. As a creator, you want to do it the best way possible, but sometimes you just have an idea, and maybe you can just riff on that idea right now, as opposed to waiting to sit down and do it. And no doubt, there's definitely a way to sit down and go on that idea, and make some notes about it, and just go through it. But other times I'm kind of like, why just don't we create content in the moment? Like right now, it's like writing. Well, writing's an awesome way to do it. You can journal, you can just make some notes, you can sit down, you can pull your phone out if you're sitting there watching something, and you can just start writing. Well, one of the things that I've been seeing is, well, what if you can't write? Not meaning like you can't physically write, although that's an option. That's something to consider as well. But for the most part, what if you are driving your car, or you're working out, or you're going for a walk, and you just want to go on that topic? I think driving is probably the number one thing to do. Meaning that's the number one place to just talk if you have something to say, kind of like what I'm doing right now. So it was just actually bringing dinner home for the family, and it was in my car, and I was leaving a voicemail for myself. So sometimes if I'm not able to write and I have an idea, I'll leave a voicemail for myself. And I really started to do that more last year, and want to do more of that. And it's helpful because I get to think through things, and as I kind of talk about it and think about it, at the end of that conversation with myself, or I guess with my voice memo, I start coming up with new things. And well, recently I was just doing it on the way to pick up the food, and I was like, well, wait a second, I can just do the podcasting here. And I've done it before because I've used Anchor before. Anchor's been around, and when Anchor first came out, I started doing it, and I like that. The aspects of leaving something like this and having people respond to it, the call-ins, as they called it, on Anchor, as I think they still have it. I'm not even sure. You can check that out, but that's what I was doing. Well, why can't you do that again? So if you have an idea and you're trying to figure out ways to, like, how can I create a 5-minute piece of content? Well, turn on your phone and start recording. Is the audio quality the best? No, but it still serves its purpose. And then, well, maybe that audio becomes a segment of your larger podcast, and you kind of like quote yourself, or you're quoting someone else in there, or you take multiple pieces of your different 5-minute posts, and then you download that, and then you edit it, right? And then you can post it as a larger podcast, or however you want to do it. But the point is, we could be in the car, have the great idea, have something you want to talk about, hit the record button, and now you have a podcast. Now, I was in this podcast group on Facebook, and I was kind of reading through things, and I'm seeing a lot of different questions. There's one person who's asking really good questions about equipment, and about being in different locations than the person that you're going to have on the podcast, or your co-host, or those types of things, or then how to publish it. Again, all very important questions, and if you're going to do it right, do it right. And then there's more questions and more questions and more questions. And the thing I wanted to say most, or one thing I was thinking most, is just create, just start doing it, because you really don't know until you start doing it. And someone had made a comment, it's like, it just gets easier over time. It's like, well, should I have a script? Should I have a list of questions? Should I have this? Should I have that? Yeah, possibly. I don't know. It just depends how you are. So sometimes people can put a script in front of themselves, and it becomes too scripted, if you know what I mean. But sometimes they're better off just like going off of a guide. And some people are better off having none of it. I've done all of the above, mostly with guides. And I've even given guides to guests for a while. And, sometimes someone really does need to know what we're going to talk about. What I've always seen is if I have someone on the show or on our podcast, I'm going to be talking about stuff that they know a lot about. I'm not going to put them on the spot and start asking them questions that they have no understanding of. That wouldn't be fair to them, and that's really not the point. At least for our podcast, maybe there's a reason to have a podcast like that where you interview people about things that they're very smart about or have an understanding about, but you want to talk about things that they don't know and just kind of get their that would be a different show, right? That's an idea. And that's when you get on a recording like this, and that's where you talk through things, and it's a way of journaling. But I guess the ultimate way of this right now is hitting the record button, just saying something. Yeah, is it always going to be perfect? No, but then you don't publish it, right? So you've talked about it, you put it out there, maybe it's not really good. Well, then you don't share it. Or, you know what, maybe it's not as bad as you think it is. And you use that to be your podcast, to be your episode. And maybe you don't publish it everywhere. You just leave it on Anchor, and that's your like secondary podcast. But maybe it creates a lot of different ideas for you and a lot of different ways to do things. So anyway, I think it is important to just create. And a lot of times I guess I'm talking to people who are also creating a lot, but then they get stuck in the creation phase because they're trying to make everything so perfect. And yes, you want to be really good at it and you want to put out good content and good quality and all that. But sometimes you just really need to talk through it because, if I hear a great idea from somebody and the quality maybe is not that great, or just there's certain aspects of things that are broken up, or they're maybe not talking the best that they could possibly talk that day, but they still got the good idea and I got to hear it. Well, isn't that enough? Yeah, you want the great audio, you want the production, you want the this, you want the that, you want the nice setting, the format, all that. But what if you just got the really good stuff and it happened to be scrambled? If you're sitting in a bar and you're talking to your friend next to you and you're talking about these different ideas and it's really loud and people are drunk and the TV's on, and there's the game's on and there's music on and people are yelling, there's all this stuff, but then you come across this idea like, did you need to be in the perfect acoustic setting, or was it okay that you're sitting at the bar and you heard your friends sort of, but you still got it, and you went home and you got that idea and you guys created this incredible business, or you created this incredible deal, or whatever that might have been? Well, doesn't that work just the same? Well, here I am and I'm recording this thing, and I'm not saying this is the greatest podcast of all time, but you did it and I did it, and hopefully maybe you can publish this and I'll have my team listen to it and see what they think, or maybe I'll just hit the send button on Anchor when I'm done. I don't know, and that's okay. But I'm almost home now, and so I appreciate the ride home and just kind of talking through things. And well, isn't that what this is about? It's just putting ideas out there, and yeah, it's a journey. It's just kind of going through the process a little bit, maybe to help you out some more. And it gets easier. Trust me. When I started doing this stuff, I'd be like, oh my God, what's this person gonna think? What's that person gonna think? You're like, you know what? Once you go through it a lot, does it really matter? Does it? I don't know. So that's my thought for now. I think you just hit that record button. No doubt, you should be creating podcasts. You should start a podcast right now. We're not at peak podcast. Again, I got a lot of stuff on our KazCM.com website. I did a post today on LinkedIn a little bit about it, but it was referring to the article that I was talking about it's called Start a Podcast Now. And, we got video about it. We got other LinkedIn posts about it. We got other content about it. I think we have it on our Instagram story right now. So the idea is start a podcast and get really good at the podcast. But then when you get really good at the podcast, or when you have a podcast and you're thinking on this journey, do more, create more, come up with more ideas, put it out there. You never know what's going to happen. So that's the idea, man. Hit that record button.
I'm Eric Kasimov, and for all of us here at KazSource, thank you for listening to Content Matterz. If you'd like to connect, you can find me on LinkedIn or Twitter. That's it for now.